as I said at the beginning of the webinar, is one of those historic days actually. Around this time last year, I remember myself preparing to attend actually, not to organize, but to attend the global strike. And last year it was on the 20th of September. And we did the strike as the organization, so nobody in the Ashok office went to the office that day, but we joined the climate strike at our capacity. And actually that day was kind of a homecoming for me, because I have seen some old and new friends during the strike, and it was amazing to see how many people attended under that very rainy day in Kadıköy at that time. And 1 year has passed, and the climate crisis is not going in a better direction. At the same time, I think we can confidently say that there are right now more people caring about climate and taking action about it. We have NGOs, we have activists, we have now Sunrise Movement, Fridays for Future, we have Planet and Climate social entrepreneurs, and some of them are new, some of them are old, but a lot of people are doing their best to, fight for the climate. And myself, as I think we will talk about it in more detail with Salvatore, as an ex-Greenpeace employee, I feel very close to my heart all these, struggle against actually climate crisis. That's why we want to end this series of webinars of Turkey Social Entrepreneurship Network with a very important subject, and we want this to be a call to action for the global climate strike, which is gonna take place on the 25th of September this year. And we have amazing guests to tell why we should all be there and what more we can and should do to do our part regarding the climate. So I will first ask all of you to introduce yourselves. First, we are going to Lisbon, Portugal. Bianca, if you can shortly, like in 2-3 minutes, introduce yourself, because I have more questions for all of you. Thank you.
Of course. Hi. Thank you all for being here. My name is Bianca Castro. I'm 19 years old and I'm a Portuguese activist and student. I'm a former music student and I'm now getting my physics degree at the Faculty of Science of the University of Lisbon, as well as an acting degree at the World Academy of Arts. I'm a Friday for Future climate activist, and I actively organize locally in Lisbon, nationally in Portugal, and internationally within the global movement. And I've participated in several international actions, strikes, climate conferences, and I've been to other conferences like COP25. More recently, I've been a part of the international project SOS Amazonia, along with other international activists. And yeah, and I plan to keep fighting for climate justice, always with science, music, acting, and activism hand in hand.
Thank you. Thank you, Bianca, for introducing yourself. And now we will go a little bit closer. We will come a little bit closer. And I will ask Selin to introduce herself, please.
Thank you, Islam, for this wonderful introduction. And thanks a lot to Bianca for being here. Bianca and I actually met in a climate conference in Lausanne, in the conference called SMILE. And it was a wonderful conference for us. But let me first introduce myself, of course. I'm Selin Gören. I'm also 19 years old. And I'm a Fridays for Future activist as well. And I'm organizing in Istanbul, Turkey. And in addition to my activism, I'm also currently a student at Yale University. And becoming a scientist activist is kind of my long-term goal. I hope to achieve it. So I also want to mention a bit about like the importance of today and this panel particularly, because I think that climate crisis and social entrepreneurship are really connected. So I believe that activists and social entrepreneurs should always work together to tackle this crisis. When I met Ashoka Turkey, actually, I saw with my own eyes how social entrepreneurs can make a huge impact at both the local and international level. And the future of our world will be saved, in my opinion, by the people who are brave and devoted enough to act on the issues they diagnose in society. That's why I think today's panel is an especially exciting one for me. And I'm so happy to be talking with these inspirational people.
Thank you, Selin'cim. Thank you very much. Now we are moving to Italy. Ciao, Salvatore. Thank you for
Hello, everyone.
Our invitation. If you can introduce yourself briefly, we will be very happy. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks to Ashoka. I've been working with Ashoka Italy many times on many campaigns, so I really respect this organization. And I'm a little bit older than my previous speakers. I'm 41, but I started to be an activist when I was 15 in Italy with Greenpeace. And it was around 94, 95 that I met Greenpeace. In that time, there was a big campaign globally to fight nuclear testing from the French government. And for me, that was incredibly inspiring to see the action on the other side of the world with people really risking their life to protect the environment and the people. And I remember in the time one of the main campaigns was on climate change. And I remember that it was so difficult to talk about climate change in that time. Lots of people remember my father didn't believe that that was true. And I really remember many moments where it was like looking someone crazy, telling people about something really impossible to happen. And in the last 25 years, I think lots of people, organizations, Greenpeace, and many environmentalists have done an incredible work to change this mindset. And fortunately, things are different now. And I really see this new generation like an incredible opportunity to tackle climate change. You know, like we have always said that we have few time left, but now we really have very, very few time left. We have few years, and this is the moment, and I really see an incredible new energy and power coming from the new generation. This is so inspiring. So I'm so happy, like to be able to give a little bit of my experience to these people. I'm also in Italy. I met with Fridays for Futures many times. I went to the demonstration with my 3-year-old child. The first demonstration he did was a Fridays for Future. And I think also that what is happening now with the COVID is showing to everyone like how we can only tackle big problems like this if we work all together, all the communities together, all the countries together. And I hope this will also help the governments, the people, to change the way they tackle big problems such as climate change, because climate change will be is coming, is already here, and it's something that I think from COVID we can learn how to tackle this problem better.
Thank you, Salvatore. Please keep some of those insights because I will ask questions related to them as well. Thank you very much for this nice intro. And Thea. So actually, Thea and I met last year in the United States. Actually, Thea Berivan, who is also in this call, Berivan Ediş from TED University in Ankara. We all met in a study visit in the United States, and we were a group of 24 people around the world who were craving more to learn about social entrepreneurship and to learn from each other. And actually, Thea was one of the very few people, maybe the only person within the group.
Nina.
Nina, and yeah, we also hosted her last time, yeah. So we had 2 people in the group working in environment and working for climate. And Thea is one of them. So Thea, what you have been doing is very precious. And thank you for accepting our offer. Thank you for accepting our invitation twice because you are on holidays. So you are from Romania. Right now you are in Bulgaria and you are giving us this time. I would be very happy if you can introduce yourself very shortly. Thank you.
Hello, everybody, and I'm thanking you for the invitation. It's good to see lovely faces after 1.5 years when we met there. Now we are working again somehow, and it's good to be in such a companion with so many young people around, not just from the speakers, but also from the participants. I'm on the old side, let's say. I'm also 41 years old. And basically, when I discovered the topic of climate change, I was not that young as you are, but more or less the same. And this was happening 15 years ago, when climate change was even at that time an emergency, at least if you were reading the scientific papers. And it's very sad to see that 15 years later, not much has changed. Just the situation has got worse from my point of view. Just a few words about me. I'm leading for, since I discovered the topic of climate change and the whole theme of sustainability, which I didn't study. I was a self-learner related to this topic. I decided to get involved. I worked for a multinational company. I worked for the Ministry of Environment in Romania, but I decided to go back and stay with the non-governmental area. I founded an NGO in Romania, started from zero, from nothing. And we developed since then, in the last 15 years, many projects, and most of them are related to climate work. For example, we do reforestation, which is a nature-based solution for climate change. We involve a lot of people in trying to raise the awareness through practical things, because I think this is the most important, not just to talk about it, but to actually start doing things related to this. We plant trees. I think we'll go beyond 500,000 trees planted already in additional forests. Especially on degraded land and forest belts in Romania, which will help in the adaptation process, because we all need to prepare on how to adapt to the consequences of climate change. And besides the reforestation, we have lots of initiatives related to education, especially education for youth, but also for people in companies, where we try to change the mindset and also give them a practical way on how to get involved and change things. We are running 2 social enterprises in our NGO, one of which is related to recycling, and we are promoting sustainable transportation. We use cargo bicycles in the city, in a very crowded city, to show that another different mean of transportation that is not polluting, it is possible. And we are very much involved in the whole recycling issue, because it's very important in Romania, and it's also part of the, let's say, the problem or the causes related to climate change, even if it's, let's say, smaller in terms of importance in my country, where we only recycle 30%, we need to go a lot of way to change things. And there are many more to say, but later on, the coming questions.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Teya. Yes, wait for my questions, great. By the way, if our participants have any questions, you can share them all in the chat, and we will try to accommodate them if the time allows. If not, we can answer them on the platform, sosyalgirişimcilik.org. So please keep your questions, keep your comments coming on the chat, so we can get a sense of this virtual room as well. Second round of questions. Actually, you know, when we were discussing about this meeting, when we were curating this together with my colleague from Ashoka, Turkey, Ezgi, we were really thinking about what we can ask you that's not on YouTube or that's not on Google, you know, because people can get that information from everywhere. But we are really curious about your personal reasons to work for climate. So let's get a little bit personal, and thank you for your openness and vulnerability in that. And I want to ask you, Bianca, what makes you organize strikes locally and internationally rather than, you know, going to the school or, you know, going to a party, which are also fine. but what makes you do that instead of many other things that you could have done?
Thank you for the question. So maybe a little backstory first. I am from a little small town in the southern of Portugal, and I was very lucky to grow up in a family that always taught me about animal rights and human rights and the environment. So since I was very young, I was conscious about this and I wanted to learn more about it. But only when I moved to Lisbon, when I was 17, was that I finally began to be more active, which was something that I already wanted, but I didn't know how to do it. So after a few months that I was in Lisbon, Fridays for Future Portugal was born, and I've been involved in it since the beginning. And I think that I had this will to do it since the beginning, because like I said, I had already learned about it, but I just really didn't know how to begin. And so I saw that opportunity and I knew that it was the right thing to do. I felt like it was the only thing to do. It was what needed to be done. Like you probably all know, science tells us that we need to cut 50% in greenhouse gas emissions in order to be able to have a future, and not doing it means destroying the physical conditions that allow human civilization, but it also means closing our eyes to climate injustice as a reality that threatens the lives of those who are already the most oppressed. And I think that's what really got me into wanting to be more active and do everything I can, is when I understood that it was also about social justice, and that those who contribute the least to the climate crisis are those who suffer the most from its consequences. And we can't tolerate this social climate injustice that will target above all those who already face the most obstacles, like women, disabled people, people that are in a worse socioeconomic position without access to a job, a living wage, decent housing, food, health services, and also racially segregated people and other minorities that are excluded. And then I also started to learn a little bit more about what was happening in my own country. And for example, in Portugal, I feel like in the rest of the world, Portugal has this kind of image of being very environmental friendly. However, that's what our government likes to say, but there's this lack of consistency between what comes out of their mouth and what they what they actually do. We are under severe environmental danger right now. We are witnessing a lack of social injustice in the closing of a thermoelectrical power plant without caring for what will happen to the workers there. We are also witnessing a building of a new airport, heavy dredging, and the list could go on. But in doing this, I've also realized that even though we need to fight for everything and we need to fight for our lives right now, they can't ignore us forever. And we have won a few battles before, which kind of gave me hope to go on and made me understand that we are actually doing something. For example, in 2015, Portugal had 15 fossil fuel exploration and extraction projects. And now in 2020, we have none. The last two remaining contracts were cancelled by the young company. It was against what the Portugal government wanted. They had voted down the proposal for these cancellations several times. However, we had a huge social mobilization against these concessions. We had school climate strikes, we had direct actions, we had mass protests, and we even had our first climate camp against fossil gas. And the reality is that now Portugal is free of fossil fuel contracts for exploration and extraction. And so this just shows me that we truly are doing something, and we truly have power to change something if we make our voices be heard. And so that's why I'm fighting. I feel like I'm fighting for a future where businesses are based on the people and on the planet and not profit, and a future where life is in the center of economy. And I think that we are a beacon of light for the huge transformation that we have to go through in the next decade in order to have a future for all living beings. And I truly believe that people power is more powerful than the people in power. So that's why I'm doing this.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. This is like how you talk about your personal, actually personal voice. It is like a manifest in itself. So thank you very much for that. And we have someone in the room who recently came, and I feel like we are now fully here. Uygar'cığım, welcome. I just wanted to say welcome. Yeah, thank you. We have an activist, social entrepreneur, and instigator. Great. So we might also want to hear from you towards that. Let's see. And Salvatore, if you can, Selin, maybe I will come to you after Salvatore, if that's okay. If you can talk a little bit about your personal whys in this work, why you were climbing probably to pipelines, starting from, you know, your Greenpeace signs, and also the social enterprises that you set up.
Yeah. First, I want to also say hi to Uygar, because before I didn't mention it, but I lived 3 years in Istanbul. I was working the Greenpeace Mediterranean. Uygar was my boss, actually. So we worked together on many campaigns, especially on nuclear. And yes, about also why I end up here is, I think is a mixture between, as I said, I started as an environmentalist quite young, when I was 15. So that I always had a kind of deep love for nature, starting from love for animals, since I was really young, since I remember. And also a big love for science. Then I ended up to study nuclear physics, also to fight nuclear, actually. It was one of my missions, but I studied physics because I really love science. And I think that understanding the reality and having a mindset that make you deep thinking of what this planet is, how beautiful is this planet, how unique and incredible story we had behind of billions of years to arrive here. It make you also understand how important it is to protect it, and how us as a human race, of course we have the right to live on this planet, to try to live a good life, but we don't have the right to change it in a way that we cannot really come back to a stable situation. And for me, especially in the last years that I've read more about the history of our planet, anthropology, genetics, make me always think that the environmental battle has been since the 70s a cultural revolution, a completely new way of thinking the planet, our service. It's not only about what we do, but how we see ourselves in this universe. And
Salvatore, can you give information about your social enterprises? I
yes,
think
so
people would be very interested in that.
Sure. So, like after Greenpeace Turkey, I went to Greenpeace Italy, and I was very lucky. I did one of the best campaigns of my life, that was to fight against nuclear. We had a referendum where we stopped a 60 billion investment on nuclear energy. And for me, the nuclear is the other face of how we produce energy, the other big problem. And I strongly believe that nuclear is not the solution of climate change, of course, but we need to do everything we can to change our way of producing energy. And after that, basically, I working for the NGOs, and I learned something about. I was working also with the agencies, creative agencies, that I was like their client, and so I thought, like, why there is not an agency that is specialized only on non-profit and social impact campaigning. And in Italy, in that time, there was not. There were other in America and UK, but not in Italy. And so we founded the Latte Creative. Latte means milk, because it was something about. First, we want to have an Italian word that everybody knows, but it's not like mafia, mandolin, or pizza. So, and also because latte has lots of metaphor. Like it's about the birth, it's about the health, and now we have. So now I have actually 3 companies, a small group that are all. Giving services to non-profit and institution on social impact campaigns. So we have Latte Creative, is a creative agency. We do advertising campaign. Now, for example, with Greenpeace, we were working on a new campaign on how to invest the money of the recovery fund for Corona in a good way and not in a bad way. So we really work closely with NGOs to help them to communicate better their campaigns. I also create another company called Worth Wearing, that it's a platform for merchandise where we have ecological and fair trade products. And we serve more than 450 organizations. So people, basically they can start to sell t-shirts for free because we print on demand. So we don't waste stuff. We print with water ink, so not chemical ink. And we have like from Doctor Without Borders, Amnesty International, WWF, we do this. And so I'm trying to give services and helping NGOs to get better on some parts. And for example, merchandise is something important for their fundraising, their advocacy, because the people wear this t-shirt and bring, spread the message. And now I created last year a new company that is called Acquisition Team and is focusing on helping NGOs to find new donors by matching with lots of digital marketing and so it's more a fundraising company. And all of these three companies, we have around 30 people in Italy, in Brussels, and now in these months we are opening in South America with another Greenpeace old friend. So we have in Argentina, sorry.
Amazing, thank you. So actually you are a great example of, you know, how activism and social entrepreneurship can go hand in hand, and actually how complementary they are to each other. So we will for sure keep you in mind and your companies in mind for our kind of further merchandising. Thank you for that, Salvatore. And now comes a story that I think I know more than the other ones. Because I had the chance to meet Selin last year and sit around a real table together with her back in our Ashoka office. So Selin'cim, if you can talk about your personal wise related to the climate fight or climate efforts, let's say. I want to use a positive word. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. It's wonderful to see Uygar abi here as well. We gave a speech with him during May, I think, in the Social Entrepreneurship Day, and it was wonderful meeting him. And I want to thank Bianca and Salvatore as well. Your stories are so inspiring. And to tell you a bit about my own story, in Turkey, actually, Fridays for Future started striking for climate in March 2019. And I became a part of the climate movement in May, when I realized perhaps for the first time that if we don't solve the climate crisis, a dark future is impending for my generation. That's when I understood that sustainability and regeneration should be at the heart of every discussion we're having. Actually, let me tell you more in detail how exactly this realization took place. My interest in environmental activism actually started when I started learning permaculture during 10th grade. After being fascinated by organic agriculture practices, I visited a famous permaculture farm called Belentepe in Turkey during spring and received a permaculture certificate after completing a course there. Permaculture was so important to me because it reminded me of how distant we as the students are living and studying from nature, and that the problems of the world can't be just studied from a textbook. After I got involved and with Fridays for Future and started organizing the high schools in Turkey, our biggest strike took place in Kadıköy district on the 20th of September, as Islam also mentioned. September 20 was indeed a big day for Turkey, as we witnessed the biggest mobility for climate, with over 10,000 people taking it to the streets to demand climate justice. And honestly, it was one of the best days of my life. I really saw the power of unity in that strike, and how a group of people coming together can make a difference. With the quarantine recently, we moved our strikes to the digital space because we knew actually that as humanity is trying to tackle the corona pandemic, the climate crisis doesn't wait. for us to like tackle this pandemic. It still continues, and that's why we're not stopping either. Our next action will be on the 25th of September, and we'll concentrate on the relationship between climate justice and social justice. As Bianca mentioned, this is a vitally important aspect of climate justice, in my opinion as well, because as Extinction Rebellion always says, we are not all on the same boat, although we are all in the same storm. So different communities are affected differently. Like there are drastic differences between different communities, and that relates to gender equality as well, because as UNFCCC always states, women aren't equally affected by climate crisis. Although everyone is of course affected drastically, women are even more affected. And also another problem is that they are not represented equally in decision-making processes, which also complicates the matter. So all in all, climate justice is social justice. So we have to think of it as a collective fight, I think. And what's also very important to me is that in addition to our strikes, we are also contacting local decision makers, municipalities, and businesses. This is, I think, very important because the only way that we can solve this crisis is if we convince the decision makers to listen to the science, actually, because we really need them to change stuff. So I think that's also a very important thing that activists are doing. So that's basically the story of how I became a part of this network of change makers. So to answer Islam's question in a more precise manner, once I realized that the artificial system built by human beings emphasizing constant growth and profit is actually the main cause of the Anthropocene extinction and climate crisis, I started feeling that it's a moral obligation for me to become an advocate for the environment, just like my other friends who are fearlessly fighting for the environment, like Bianca. And luckily, I met Fridays for Future, and that's how I found a platform to raise my voice. So yeah.
Thank you. Selin, actually, I will ask you what type of call to action you are doing to businesses and decision makers, but we will come to that in the last round, okay? Thank you for that. And Thea, actually, your stories, like what Selin mentioned, saying that, you know, as a school, as a student, I realized how much far, you know, how far I was from the nature itself. And that realization actually led her taking action. And your job is that actually, you know, bringing school to nature or nature to school, working together with students and volunteers. So can you tell a little bit about your why? Because there are many other things that you can do, but you are working in this area. So if you can talk about that a little bit. Thank you.
I think we have here, at least in the speakers panel, two types of generation. We have the young generation with a wonderful spirit, and their life happened when the people around were starting to become more aware of the issue. But my generation, it's a different story. First of all, because I'm from Romania, and my first 12 years of life happened in the communism. So the main struggle at that time was economical survival and human rights issues. So that was the reality around me. And after the revolution we had in Romania, and after everything that happened in Eastern Europe at that time, we continued to struggle and to learn what democracy was. So basically my reality at the age of Bianca, for example, was a very, very different one. Imagine that when we were in high school, we didn't have internet. So people were communicating differently at that time. And because the issues and let's say the focus areas were totally different for the whole generation in my country, and the educational system was built in a way that environment was nowhere. So for me, since I was in kindergarten and until I graduated university, environment was not on the topic of any teacher. Just think how your life could be, and not even media, let's say, not this was not something that mass media will talk about it. What happened to me and my chance was that I started doing volunteer work. Since my first year of university, I said I want to do more with my life. It cannot be just about the profession or the degree at the end, the paper, and just to have a job and make money and that's it. I wanted to do something with meaning in my life. I joined an international student association, and I had the opportunity to travel all around the world. And basically I did, like, I don't know, 7 years of volunteering in many different countries, and got in touch with different cultures, and understanding that beyond Romania, there are so many more issues that we face globally. And I was in that struggle, or okay, what to do with my life, where to go. I know that I want to make a difference, and that I want to get involved in a way that I'm feeling fulfilled with my life. But the problem was what to do and what to choose. So what happened is that after I finished university, after I finished traveling all around the world, when I chose my first job, I wanted to choose a job that was beyond making money. I applied for a multinational, but for a position that was related to sustainable development, a concept that I didn't know at that time. It was like 16 years ago. No, actually 18 years ago, my God, time flies so fast. And I didn't know almost anything about the topic at the moment. But I knew it was much more about, it was not just about making profit for the company. We had a tight competition, and among 100 people, I was the lucky one, and another colleague of mine who got the jobs in Amsterdam. And we worked as a trainee in the Global Department for Sustainable Development of a very, I would say, good bank at that time. It's ABN AMRO. They were in top of sustainability at global level. And I had the chance during 1 year of work there to actually learn during the working hours and everything that I did outside the working hours. I read a lot of books and a lot of scientific studies, and I was part also of the discussion happening at global level, and the main topic at that time was climate change. So that was my first contact with the topic of sustainability and climate, and I was terrified, like really. I still remember a book that marked my life. It was Limits to Growth, 30-year update. That was the book. After I read about 300 pages of, I don't know, ideas from scientific people, I decided that this is what I want to do with my life. This is something that needs a shift, a complete shift in the way we are organizing our society, and especially our economical models. And this is how I came to start working and being focused on the practical side. I like very much not the theoretical part, but how we actually change things on a day-to-day basis at individual level, as organizations or as communities. Like, what are the solutions? Because sustainability, it's a very nice and utopic concept. It would be nice for everybody to develop like this, but when you come down to earth and you think if this is really possible, then you'll see the challenges. And finding real life solutions for the unsustainability of our world, that's what motivates me a lot. And that's what got me into this work of social enterprises, because this is where we do this practical work, pioneer work. We test new things which are not part of our current way of doing and organizing our lives. And we try new models and new products, new services, new behaviors for individuals. And this is related to all the educational initiatives that we are organizing. So if we don't get practical, and we just keep the things like the politicians did for decades, with only talking about and moving and changing nothing, the situation will become even worse. We need to start changing things, no matter where we are. If we are an individual, we are leading an organization, we are starting a new business, we are a teacher, we are a scientific person. There are so many roles that provide us the opportunity to actually bring up this change that we need as humanity. And the previous speakers already discussed about the issue and the necessity to do this change. And the power is in our hands wherever we are. But probably we'll discuss this later a little bit more.
Yeah, now actually we are coming to that. But what I've heard from all of you, you know, when you are also talking about your personal stories, it is actually the power of choices, you know, choice of your kind of what type of career I want to lead, what type of world I want to live in, or what type of friends, like-minded, like-hearted people I will have around myself. So I think like we are always making decisions consciously or unconsciously, and the decisions you have made on the way, actually, they have brought you here, and we have a decision to make actually right now as well. And everybody has a decision to make related to climate. So in this last part of our conversation, actually, I want us to talk a little bit about this, you know, what call to action you have for the world, you know, in our also local communities. So please mention both the strikes, you know, and also the call to actions that you are doing to businesses, decision makers, politicians, and your communities. This is kind of the place to do it. So Bianca, if we can start with you in this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe to start off, I mean, 2019 has been the year of climate consciousness, and it wasn't by accident. Millions of people took the streets and demanded climate justice. So people are starting to realize that we are running out of time and we still have to change everything. And to change everything, we need everyone. The fight for climate justice, the fight for social justice, and the fight for life, in the end, needs all of us. Ignoring the climate crisis obviously is no longer an option. I mean, in the past 2 years, the world has emitted more than 80 gigatons of CO2, and we are seeing natural disasters due to the climate crisis all across the globe every day. Life as we know it is at risk, and governments and corporations need to be held accountable for it, and they need to take action. And I believe that together we can make them take concrete steps to fight the climate crisis. I think that we truly are waking up and we aren't falling back asleep. And we managed to get the climate crisis discussed in several panels and governments, parliaments. It has never been talked about so much, but however, words are still speaking louder than actions. And that's why we need to keep fighting and putting pressures on the people that are in power and that should do something about this. In Portugal, we're doing, well, besides the climate strikes that we have, another one on the 25th, like Selin was saying. And in Portugal, we're going to have physical strikes in over 10 cities. And we're partnering up with other organizations and labor unions and all, because we truly want to focus on social justice. And so we are building it together with all of these other collectives and organizations and movements. And we are also doing campaigns against specific corporations. For example, we have Galp, which is an oil and gas company here in Portugal. And so we're doing several actions against it as well. We had this huge action a few months ago called Galp Must Fall. And actually they talked about it in the parliament. So we managed to do that. And yeah, I think that we just need to escalate, you know, like the climate crisis is being talked about, but things aren't being done, and we need concrete action, and we can't pretend that it is with small resolutions and promises that this will be fixed, because it's not, and our future and the future of all living generations and beings is at risk. And so I think that we need to escalate, and we need to show everyone that we will continue being here and we will continue being loud. And so I think that, well, first of all, and from personal experience as well, I think that joining a climate justice collective or any group that will demand social justice, it also gives us a feeling of not being alone. You know, like we are under so many crises. We're under the climate crisis, but also an economic crisis, a health crisis, social crisis. And I think that on a personal level, it's also good for us to take action because of it, because we won't feel so alone, and we will feel like we truly can make a change, and everyone can make a change. Nobody's too small to do it. And so I think that something that everyone can do is to start researching about problems, social problems, climate issues happening on a local level, but also a national and international level, and to look for climate justice collectives near you, like Fridays for Future chapters or any local group that you might have around you. And if not, you can even create your own. I think that it's really important to remind ourselves that even though the world seems like it's collapsing, and it kind of is, and we truly need to fight, but it's important to also remember that we can make a change, and we will make a change, and that our power is stronger than the power of the world leaders that are not doing enough, and that we will still be here and showing them that they need to do something, and we will make them do it.
Thank you, Bianca. You know, listening to you, I'm like shuffling between emotions, you know, very, very kind of positive and hopeful, and then but the reality, but then the hope, everything. Thank you for giving us all those feelings, Bianca. This was very, very helpful and a great call to action. Thank you for that. And Salvatore, if I ask you and if I give you like 2 minutes, what would be your call to action, and to who, you know, we are okay doing call to actions to everyone, but if there's any specific group, please also share that. Thank you.
Yes, that's really very, very inspiring, and I'm so thrilled about this new generation of campaigners and activists. Really, it's a little bit speechless. You know, it's difficult to talk after her. And the things, I agree with everything she's saying. The only things that I would like to add is of course, this battle that Fridays for Future are doing, it's super important to tackle the leaders and the governors. I also think that we need to think more on the economical, and how economy is really have a strong power to decide on climate and on the environment, because we shouldn't hide ourselves on the fact that politics is less and less power in this period. And we saw also with this COVID situation how few corporations are taking huge advantage on what happened with the virus. Company like Amazon, they're really controlling the logistics and of mostly of Western countries, and they are collecting and saving billions of money, and they have an incredible power. And I know that Fridays for Future, of course, they're doing lots of corporate campaigning, but I think somehow we should also get more deep on our understanding of the economy. Something, you know, like older generations during the 70s, the 80s have discussed for years on, you know, the struggle of the poor and the rich. But now I think we talk less about this stuff, and also the technology is giving the power really for few people, few corporations to change our life dramatically, and having a central power of an incredible magnitude. I think the next big revolution is like the automation of labor, that will really create tens and tens of millions all in Europe of new unemployed people, that we need to understand these people, what they have to do. And it's now the moment to understand how our humanity, our human race can be engaged in a different way than the past. You know, consumerism and capitalism, like we have to say this word, you know, like I don't want to be like all the guy talking, but the capitalism is the problem, is how everything in this society is based on accumulating more and more money. And it's not something we can hide, and it's not something we should talk more and more. And that's it. I just want to send this message to them.
Thank you, Salvatore. Actually, you have brought up a great aspect to the issue, the economical aspect, and we will hear from one person about it at the end of our talk today. And Selin, what would be your call to action to people? And also, if, you know, from where Salvatore left, if you can talk about what type of call to action we are making towards businesses. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. For both businesses and for politicians, we, whenever we talk with them, we try to emphasize and try to explain to them, actually to convince them that they should all become climate activists. And we explain it by like such a logic. I mean, when you think about it, actually it makes sense that the younger generation, like we have lots of climate activists in Gen Z, because actually this will be our future. So it makes sense that there are lots of people who are fighting for this. That's something that the older generations generally don't have. Of course, we have lots of exceptions in this room, because they tend to think that the climate crisis won't affect them directly because they won't be alive then. Because, you know, the IPCC report always says that, I mean, we have 8 years, 10 years, something like that. And they automatically think, okay, I will be really old 10 years later. So I don't really have to care about this. I mean, setting aside all the moral issues with that statement, I think it's also scientifically not true, as the recent wildfires in California and the sandstorms in Ankara, for example, have been signaling us the climate crisis is actually already here. So this fight involves everyone who lives on the planet Earth and who wants to keep living on the planet Earth. So we try to explain this to all the politicians and also the businesses, because people, when we say climate activist, people think that it's really hard to become a climate activist, but I think it's important to realize that in order to play your part in the climate movement, you don't necessarily need to be a full-time activist and devote your entire time to that. I think the best way that we can approach this, and we also tell this to businesses as well, is to think about how you can contribute using your own knowledge, your position, your unique talents, and of course expertise. So this also includes politicians, people who are working in businesses, because they also have a certain type of expertise. And what they have to do is, I mean, for example, we cannot dismiss someone who is working in a business just because they are polluting the world, I think, because that person has also, for example, that economic background, and that person can also change stuff using that economic background, but they just have to change their mindset and think about a more sustainable economy and such a system. So I think that's a plausible thing to do. Just to give some examples, for example, recently Sila Hess is a singer, and she did a song for our next global strike, which will be on the 25th of September. By the way, I would recommend everyone to listen to it. It's amazing. The song is called Long Forgotten Road. And for example, she contributed like that. She's not a climate activist, but she's a singer. And then a scientist, for example, can contribute through climate research, like Levent Kurnaz, Ümit Şahin are doing in Turkey. And the politician can obviously push for legislation that will reduce carbon emissions and create new green jobs, like the Green New Deal supporters like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the US. So there are actually a million ways that you can help our cause, and every single effort counts. So that's what we try to explain to the business leaders and the politicians, that they don't necessarily have to close down their business. Of course, that would be maybe the preferred method if there's like huge polluters. But even though they cannot do that, of course, a CEO cannot do that, we just try to explain to them that they can still do the best that they can, and they can still shift towards green technologies and green initiatives, support new green initiatives, and also social entrepreneurs who are working on this stuff. So yeah, that's our call to action as Fridays for Future Turkey whenever we talk with a decision maker, basically.
Thank you. Selin'cim, it will be kind of a surprising request, but may I ask, maybe ask you to maybe write kind of a small piece in Turkish so that we post it to our online platform, sosyalgirişimcilik.org, on what people can do building up to the climate strike. Thank you very much. I know you weren't expecting that, but I took my chance. Thank you.
Do I need to like write it now, or
write it and we will tell you how to post it on our platform, online platform.
I mean, will it be a short thing or like an article?
But something? You have just said maybe you can just.
Okay. Okay,
like
sure.
The call to actions for different people, so that we have this amazing list written somewhere and people can refer to it in the years to come as well.
Okay.
Thank you. And okay, we have like we are planning to finish in like 5 to 6 minutes, and I want to hear from Thea, and then we will have our one more call to action and then our closing survey. So please bear with us if you have some more minutes. Thank you for that. And Thea, if I can hear your call to action, and also if people can join something in Romania, what type of platforms, and all your call to actions. Thank you.
Well, my first and most important call to action is related to education, and education starts with us. For me, that was the most important issue related to myself and the generation around me, and looking at the current decision makers, even they are politicians or in business, you realize that many times their mistakes that they are doing and their lack of awareness and involvement in these issues it has at roots the lack of education. And if we'll all invest a little bit more in raising our awareness related to this issue, probably things will change. So if we want to implement any kind of change, we need to be the change. We need to be aware of what we are doing. If you never did this before, I would advise you to do a carbon calculator and find out how much is your carbon footprint and see what you can do in your own life, because your personal example is the most powerful of all. And you'll realize there are so many things related to efficiency, or sometimes just avoiding waste, things that you don't use, but they are wasting resources around you. And these are the things that you can give up very easily. Then there is the switch to technology. We have so many options right now. It's just a matter of investment and looking on long term. And if we apply these things in our own life, this will be possible also according to the area of influence that each of us has, to apply it in our own families, apply it in our own organizations, in our countries, in our cities. And it's just going from the small scale to big scale. But from me, this is the right order to do it. And use everything that is in your hands, because we have voting rights. We can choose politicians who have on their agenda climate and environment protection. We choose with our wallet what we buy and what we decide not to buy anymore. So this is something that it's an impact that we have on a daily basis. And if Selin already mentioned, if you have some skills and expertise, put it also in practice. You can do accounting in a, I don't know, arm factory, or you can do accounting at Greenpeace. I think it's a very big difference. Yeah, for whom you are working for, the decisions that you mentioned Ishtem before. Yeah, it's like, what is the job that I want to have? What is the employer that I want to work for? What I want to do with my free time? Where do I go on vacation? What things I buy? Everything we do on our daily life is changing this reality, and the future that we'll have is not just one single thing, but it's a general awareness of everything in our own life. It will lead to a certain future or another.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Thea. Actually, you brought it at a great place. because we have someone in the room who kind of his work is embodying what you have been saying about the economic aspect, sociological aspect, and of course the environmental aspect of all our choices and everything, both at a personal level but also at a community level. So we have Ashoka Senior Fellow Uygar Özesmi in the room, who has been a great teacher to myself, actually, learning about all these and being more and more inspired in all the work that we are doing, both in Ashoka Turkey and in many other venues. And myself, I'm also a proud prosumer on goodfortrust.org. This is one of my titles, you know, this, that, and then a prosumer. So thank you, Uygar, for, you know, opening that space for us to be prosumers. So if you can, we have short time, but if you can tell a little bit about that work and make your call to action for all of us. Thank you.
Yes, I mean, making a call to action after all the call to actions that have been mentioned by Bianca, Salvatore, Selin, and Thea, they haven't left it, they covered the whole thing, you know. It's just so wonderful to hear, you know, all of those. And just like Salvatore says, the new generation, Bianca, Selin, they give us like so much hope. And we also see real people power emerging from there. So the only thing that I can say is, as a call to action, organize, you know, organize, be a community, like you said, Istam, become people power by organizing and coming together for change, whether it's activism, whether it's purchasing the right things, whether it is to organize for political power, whatever it is, organize, join forces, form that people power. And that's what we're trying to do at goodfortrust.org. The prosumer thing is exactly that. It's building a community. It's building people power around sustainable businesses, building social enterprise power, bringing social enterprises together as people power. So not individuals, but bringing social enterprises together as people power and deepening their sort of building community together. So that's all I can say. Organize whatever it is in the right direction. That's my call to action.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Uygar, and thank you for this kind of impromptu contribution as well. This was very helpful. So we have come to the end of our webinar for today. This will be also uploaded to YouTube so that more and more people can get inspiration. We are hoping to do it before the strike so that we can also populate it on social media, etc. And before you all leave, we have one last survey. If we can start this, if you can answer the questions, like how you liked the webinar and if it's helped you increase your awareness and if it's contributed to your perception. So yeah, we have 44 people to answer. I will wait till it's around 35. And we also have some questions from the audience related to greenwashing. And we have been also discussing it today at Ashoka Fellows group. There was a very kind of lively discussion. We will post it as well. We will post that on the group on turkiyesosyalgirişimcilik.org on our platform. And you can follow the conversation from there because we don't have the time right now. Türetici, prosumer Caner, prosumer İngilizcesi. Producer'la consumer'ın ortaklığı. Super. We can end the poll. Super. So, thank you very much for joining us today, Selin, Salvatore, Teya, Bianca from all over Europe, and thank you for your time. And we are thanking our participants for their time. This was the last webinar of Turkey Social Entrepreneurship Network for now, so I'm a bit sad to say this. But our actions will continue, so please follow us on our social media and Türkiye Sosyal Girişim and sosyalgirişimcilik.org. We will be there, always available and present. Thank you very much. We can end the conversation.